I'm the head of the most powerful syndicate in the country, but I've never felt more powerless. It started at that masquerade ball, the one night I allowed myself to be someone else. I met a woman in a silver mask, a stranger who looked into my soul and saw the man I am when I'm not playing the part of a monster. Now I'm obsessed with a memory, searching every face in every crowd for the lady in silver who vanished before the clock struck midnight. I'd give up my entire empire just to find her again.
He's looking for a ghost, while I'm standing right at his feet. To him, I'm just the quiet girl who cleans his office and stays out of the way. He has no idea that the silver dress we danced in that night is hidden in a bag under my bed. Every time he looks past me with those lonely, searching eyes, I have to remind myself he isn't looking for me. He's looking for the girl from the ball, not the black maid his family treats like she's invisible. In his world, I'm the lady in silver, the only one who ever made him feel human. But in this house, I'm just a servant struggling to survive his family's cruelty. I want to tell him the truth, but I'm terrified. If he finds out his mystery woman is just the girl his family treats like nothing, I won't just lose my heart. I'll lose the only home I have left.
If this moment of hidden identities pulled you in, stay with them. Their story has only just begun. Stay with me. Like the video, subscribe for free, and comment your thoughts below. The polished marble floors of the Kang estate were cold enough to seep through the thin soles of Alara's regulation slippers. To the world, she was a non-entity, a ghost haunting the corridors of power. To the syndicate, she was merely the Black Maid, a visual outlier in a house built on ancestral purity and blood-stained tradition. She knelt now, scrubbing a stubborn wine stain from the rug in the main study, her fingers raw from the harsh lie. Lee Jae-wook didn't even look up when he entered. The air in the room shifted instantly, heavy with the scent of sandalwood and the sharp metallic tang of cold rain. He was the Gaju, the head of the family, and his presence was a physical weight. He tossed his coat onto a chair, nearly hitting her. He didn't apologize. You don't apologize to the furniture. The tea is cold, he said, his voice a low, jagged rasp that sent a traitorous shiver down Alara's spine. I will replace it immediately, Depunim, she whispered, keeping her head bowed so low her chin touched her collarbone. Don't bother, he snapped, finally turning. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with a weariness that went deeper than bone. He looked at her, but he didn't see her. He was looking through her, searching for a phantom in a silver mask. Just finish and leave. I can't stand the sound of the scrubbing. It's too loud. Alara gathered her bucket, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. He had no idea that 3 nights ago, those same hands, now red and peeling from bleach, had been draped over his shoulders as they drifted across a moonlit terrace. He had no idea that the girl he was currently treating like a nuisance was the only person who had heard him whisper, I am tired of being a monster, into the crook of her neck. The debt that bound Alara to the Kang family was a jagged thing, a blood contract signed by a father who had gambled away more than just money. She was a captive in a gilded cage, her every movement monitored by Jae-wook's stepmother, a woman whose cruelty was as refined as her silk handbox. You're late with the linens, the elder woman hissed, catching Alara in the hallway. She didn't wait for an explanation before backhanding Alara across the cheek. The blow was sharp, ringing in Alara's ears. Remember your place, woman/girl. You are here to serve, not to breathe the same air as us. Jeomyeon, black. A constant reminder that she didn't belong in their world. Alara took the blow in silence, her eyes fixed on the floor. She thought of the silver dress hidden in the vents of her cramped basement room. It was her only rebellion. She had found the invitation to the syndicate's masquerade discarded in the trash, and in a moment of sheer, beautiful madness, she had decided to go. Not as a maid, not as a debtor, but as a woman. The transformation had been a ritual of shedding skin. In the darkness of her cellar, she had used an old family heirloom, a shimmering silver lace shawl, to stitch together a gown that looked like liquid starlight. She had painted her lips a defiant red and donned a mask that obscured everything but her eyes. When she stepped into the ballroom of the Grand Seoul Hotel, the world had changed. For the first time in years, people looked at her with awe instead of disdain. And then she saw him. Jae-wook was standing by the balcony, looking like a king who hated his crown. "You look like a dream I'm afraid to wake up from," he had murmured when he approached her. They hadn't just danced, they had collided. Under the anonymity of the masks, the Mafia boss had laid himself bare. He spoke of the loneliness of the throne, of the way the blood on his hands never seemed to wash off. And Alara, for the first time in her life, spoke back. She didn't talk about cleaning supplies or debts. She talked about the stars, about the poetry of the sea, about the man he could be if the world would let him. But the clock had been her enemy. As the first chime of midnight echoed, she had felt the reality of the lie in the basement pulling her back. She had torn herself from his arms, fleeing through the garden, leaving nothing behind but a thin silver ribbon snagged on a rose bush and a scent of jasmine that would haunt his dreams. Now back in the estate, the contrast was a slow-acting poison. Jae-wook was a different man. He was volatile, his temper flaring at the slightest provocation. He spent his nights in the study, drinking expensive scotch and staring at that silver ribbon. "Find her!" Ilara heard him roar at his lieutenants through the heavy oak doors. "I don't care if you have to burn this city to the ground. Find the lady in silver." Ilara entered the room with a tray of water, her movements practiced and invisible. She saw the way his hand trembled as he touched the fabric. She wanted to reach out. She wanted to say, "I'm here. The girl who understood your soul is the same one you just yelled at for moving your papers." As she leaned over to set the glass down, a lock of her hair fell forward. For a split second, their eyes met. Jae-wook froze. There was a flicker of something, a spark of recognition, a haunting familiarity in the depth of her brown eyes. "Wait," he whispered, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Yes, Depunim," she asked, her voice trembling. He reached out, his fingers hovering inches from her face, tracing the faint bruise on her cheek left by his stepmother. The tension in the room was suffocating, a bridge of electricity forming between the boss and the maid. If you feel the chemistry building between the ghost and the hunter, stay close. Subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter. Comment what you think he's about to do. Stay with me. Like the video, subscribe for free, and comment your thoughts below. He pulled his hand back as if it was burning. "Who did this to you?" "I tripped, sir," she lied, the words tasting like ash. "You lie poorly," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. He looked at her properly then, really looked at her. He noticed the grace in her posture, the way she carried herself with a quiet dignity despite the rags she wore. "There is something about you." A scent. "Jasmine?" Ilara's heart stopped. She had been so careful to wash the jasmine oil from her skin, but the scent of the ball lingered in her hair like a curse. "It's just the soap, sir. The cheap soap from the kitchens." He stepped closer, invading her personal space, his shadow looming over her. "That is not the smell of the kitchens. That is the smell of a woman who knows secrets." Before he could press further, the door swung open. His stepmother swept in, her face a mask of cold fury. "Jae-wook, why are you wasting time with this trash? The elders are waiting in the dining hall. We have business to discuss regarding the territory expansion." The spell was broken. Jae-wook's face hardened, the mask of the monster sliding back into place. "I'm coming," he said, not looking at Alara again. As they left, the stepmother leaned in close to Alara, her voice a venomous whisper. "If I catch you looking at him again, I'll ensure your debt is paid in skin, not labor. Do you understand?" Ilara nodded, her eyes stinging. She waited until they were gone before sinking to the floor, her body shaking. She was living two lives, and both were slowly killing her. She was a queen in his heart and a dog at his feet. The next few days were an escalation of agony. The step-family, sensing Jae-wook's distraction, doubled their efforts to break Alara. They made her clean the outdoor fountain in the freezing rain. They accidentally spilled hot tea on her hands. And through it all, Jae-wook watched from his window, his brow furrowed, torn between the ghost he was hunting and the shadow that was always underfoot. He began to notice the small things, the way she hummed a specific melancholic melody while she dusted, the same melody the orchestra had played during their dance. The way she moved with a rhythmic fluidity that didn't belong to a servant. The obsession was shifting, morphing into a confused, dangerous curiosity. He was a hunter, and he was starting to realize that the prey he sought wasn't hiding in the city. She was hiding in plain sight. Before we continue, quick question. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for free because the next story might be even crazier than this one. The obsession didn't just grow, it fermented, turning into a volatile brew of frustration and longing. Jae-wook spent his nights tearing apart the city's social registries, but his days were spent watching the girl with the bucket. He began to notice the way her spine never truly bent, even when she was on her knees. There was an inherent guihan, a nobility, in her silence that began to grate on his nerves because it felt so familiar. The atmosphere in the Kang estate reached a fever pitch. The stepmother, Madame Kang, had sensed the shift in the air. She saw the way Jae-wook's eyes followed Alara's dark skin against the white linens, and it offended her sensibilities. To her, Alara was a stain on the family's aesthetic purity. "The girl is getting bold," Madame Kang hissed to her daughter Yuna over breakfast. "She moves through the halls like she owns the shadows. It's time we reminded her that she is nothing but a ghost we haven't exorcised yet." That afternoon, the escalation turned physical. Alara was tasked with polishing the ancestral silver in the grand dining hall. As she worked, Yuna walked past, intentionally catching the corner of the heavy oak table and sending a crystal vase crashing to the floor. The water soaked Alara's uniform, and the glass shattered near her bare ankles. "Look what you've done, you clumsy thing!" Yuna shrieked, her voice a sharp blade. "That was a Ming Dynasty piece. Do you have any idea how many lifetimes of your miserable labor it would take to pay for that?" Alara didn't argue. She knew the script. "I am sorry, Miss Yuna. I will clean it up." "With your hands," Madame Kang commanded, appearing in the doorway. "Every shard. If I find a single sliver of glass on this floor later, I'll have you whipped." Alara knelt, her fingers trembling. She began to pick up the jagged pieces. A sharp edge sliced into her thumb, a bead of bright red blood blooming against the white floor. She didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to. But as she reached for a larger fragment, a heavy, polished leather boot stepped firmly onto her hand. She gasped, the pain shooting up her arm. She looked up to see Jae-wook standing over her. His face was a mask of cold stone, but his eyes were burning. "What is happening here?" he asked, his voice a low vibration that made the remaining crystal on the table hum. "The maid broke the vase, Jae-wook," Madame Kang said smoothly, smoothing her silk skirt. "I am simply teaching her the value of our property." Jae-wook didn't look at his stepmother. He looked down at Alara. He saw the blood. He saw the way she refused to cry. And then he smelled it again. That faint, haunting trace of jasmine, now mixed with the metallic scent of her blood. It hit him like a physical blow. "Pick up the glass," he commanded. Alara's heart sank. She thought he was joining in. "Yes, sir." "Not you," Jae-wook barked, his gaze snapping to Yuna. "You, pick it up. You tripped. I saw it from the balcony." The silence that followed was absolute. Yuna's face turned a dusty purple. "Jae-wook, you would humiliate your sister for her? In this house, the only thing more valuable than our property is the truth," Jae-wook said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. "Pick it up." Jae-wook didn't stay to watch his sister's humiliation. He grabbed Alara by the arm, not roughly, but with an insistent grip, and hauled her out of the room. He pulled her into his private study and slammed the door, locking it. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the velvet armchair that cost more than her father's entire life. "Sir, I shouldn't—" "I said sit." He went to a cabinet and pulled out a first aid kit. Alara watched in stunned silence as the most feared man in Seoul knelt before her. He took her bleeding hand in his touch surprisingly gentle as he began to clean the cut. "You're a mystery," he murmured, his head bowed. "My family treats you like a dog, yet you look at them as if they're the ones in cages. Why don't you fight back?" "I have a debt, Depunim. My father—" "I know about the debt. I bought it," he interrupted, looking up. His eyes searched hers, and for a moment, the mask of the boss slipped. "But a debt doesn't explain your eyes. I know those eyes. I've been seeing them in my sleep for a week." Ilara felt the walls closing in. The proximity was too much. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the sheer intensity of his focus. "You're mistaken, sir. I'm just a maid." "Are you?" He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "Then why, when I look at you, do I feel like I'm finally standing on that balcony again? Why do you smell like the woman who stole my peace of mind?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver ribbon. He held it up between them. "I found this in the garden. It matches the dress she wore, a dress that was made of a very specific, very rare silver lace. I've had my men track the fabric. It's an heirloom weave. Very few people in this country possess it." Ilara's breath hitched. She had been too careless. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held her firm. "I'm going to find her, Ilara," he whispered, his thumb brushing against her wrist, right where her pulse was racing like a panicked drum. "And when I do, I'm going to ask her why she's hiding in my own house, cleaning my floors. Maybe she's hiding because she knows that the man she met at the ball doesn't exist in this house," Ilara blurted out, the words escaping before she could stop them. Jawook froze. His grip tightened slightly. "What did you say?" "The man at the ball was human," Ilara said, her voice growing stronger with desperation. "He was kind. He was tired. The man in this house, he lets his family bleed people dry. He lets his sister step on the hands of the people who serve him. Maybe the lady in silver isn't hiding from you. Maybe she's hiding from the monster you've become." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of things unsaid. Jawook stood up slowly, his face unreadable. He looked down at her, the silver ribbon still clutched in his hand. "A monster," he repeated, the words sounding hollow. "Is that what you see?" "It's what you show the world," she replied. He turned away, walking to the window and looking out over the sprawling estate. "Get out," he said quietly. "Go back to your duties." Ilara didn't wait. She scrambled out of the room, her heart thudding against her ribs. She had crossed a line. She had poked the beast, and she knew there would be consequences. The consequences came sooner than she expected, but not from Jawook. Madame Kang had seen him take Ilara into the study. She had seen the way he looked at the girl. To her, this wasn't just a matter of class, it was a threat to her power. If Jawook became soft for a servant, the structure of the syndicate would crumble, and her position with it. "The girl needs to go," she told her head of security, a man with a scarred face and no soul. "But not before we find out what she's been stealing. I want her room searched. I want every inch of that basement turned upside down. She's been far too comfortable lately." That night, while Ilara was in the kitchens, they struck. When she returned to her small room in the cellar, she found it in shambles. Her mattress had been ripped open. Her few books were torn. And there, standing in the middle of the room, with a look of predatory triumph, was Madame Kang. In her hands, she held the silver dress. "A maid with a gown fit for a princess," Madame Kang said, her voice dripping with mock wonder. "Tell me, Ilara, who did you steal this from? Or did you sell your body to buy the fabric?" "It's mine," Ilara said, her voice trembling. "It was my mother's shawl. I made it." "You made it?" Madame Kang laughed, a cold, dry sound. "You expect me to believe a creature like you has the skill to create such beauty? No, this is stolen property, and I suspect it isn't the only thing." She tossed the dress onto the floor and stepped on it, her heel grinding into the delicate silver lace. Ilara let out a strangled cry and lunged forward, but the security guards caught her, pinning her arms behind her back. "Search the rest," Madame Kang commanded. They tore through her small box of keepsakes, and then from the bottom of her Bible, a guard pulled out a heavy, gold-encrusted watch. Ilara's eyes widened. "I've never seen that before. I didn't take that." "That is my husband's watch," Madame Kang said, a cruel smile spreading across her face. "The one he was buried with. You've been robbing the dead, Ilara. That is a crime the syndicate does not forgive." "I didn't! You planted it!" Ilara screamed, struggling against the guards. "Take her to the interrogation room," Madame Kang said, her eyes flashing with malice, "and call Jawook. Tell him we've found the thief who's been living under our roof. Let's see how much he likes his mystery when she's covered in the filth of her own lies." Before we continue, quick question. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for free, because the next story might be even crazier than this one. The interrogation room was located in the sub-basement, a place where the air was thick with the smell of damp concrete and old fear. Ilara was shoved into a wooden chair, her wrists bound tightly with zip ties. Above her, a single bulb flickered, casting long, jagged shadows against the walls. The door creaked open, and Jae-wook stepped in. He didn't look like the man who had gently bandaged her hand an hour ago. He looked like the boss. His face was a mask of cold, unyielding granite. Behind him stood Madame Kang, her arms crossed, wearing a look of practiced grief. She hid it in her Bible, Jae-wook, the stepmother sighed. To think we brought her into our home, and she repays us by desecrating your father's memory. The watch was supposed to stay with him in the vault. Jae-wook walked slowly around the chair. He didn't speak. He picked up the gold watch from the metal table and weighed it in his hand. Then he picked up the silver dress, now stained with a muddy footprint and torn from Madame Kang's heel. "Is this yours?" Jae-wook asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "The dress is mine," Ilara whispered, her voice cracking. "The watch. I have never seen it. She put it there. She's trying to destroy me because you looked at me." Madame Kang let out a sharp, indignant gasp. "You see? The girl is delusional. She's trying to drive a wedge between us with her lies." Jae-wook stopped in front of Ilara. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. The silence stretched, becoming a physical weight. Every breath Ilara took felt like she was inhaling glass. She saw his eyes drop to the silver fabric in his other hand. He rubbed the lace between his thumb and forefinger. Suddenly, he froze. His eyes snapped to the hem of the dress. There, dangling by a few threads, was a jagged edge where a piece of fabric had been torn away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver ribbon he had found in the garden. He lined them up. The edges matched perfectly. The weave, the pattern, the jagged tear. It was a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. The realization hit him like a physical blow to the chest. He looked at the bruised, exhausted girl in the chair, then at the silver gown, and finally at the gold watch. He didn't scream. He didn't explode. He became deathly, terrifyingly still. "Mother," he said, his voice a low, vibrating hum. "This watch, it has a very specific mechanism. It's a perpetual calendar. It requires winding every 48 hours or it stops." "What does that have to do with anything?" Madame Kang snapped. Jae-wook turned the watch over. "The second hand is moving. My father has been dead for 5 years. If this was in his vault, it would be still. This watch was in winter, in your jewelry cabinet, until 20 minutes ago." Madame Kang's face went pale, the blood draining from her cheeks. "Jae-wook, don't be ridiculous." "Get out!" he roared, the sound echoing off the concrete walls like a gunshot. The guards scrambled, and Madame Kang stumbled backward, her composure shattering. She fled the room, the click of her heels sounding like frantic heartbeats. Jae-wook didn't move. He stood with his back to Ilara for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a pocket knife, and sliced through her bindings. Ilara slumped forward, her circulation returning in a painful rush. She expected him to say something, to apologize, to yell, to hold her. Instead, he dropped to his knees in front of her, burying his face in the ruined silver fabric of the dress. "I am a fool," he choked out. The sound was raw, a total muniojita, a collapse of the man he pretended to be. "I spent every night searching the city for a ghost, while I let my own house break the woman I loved. I looked into your eyes every day and I didn't see you. I didn't see you because I didn't think I deserved you." Ilara reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched his dark hair. "Jae-wook, don't," he whispered, looking up. His eyes were wet. "Don't be kind to me, not after this." "I didn't go to the ball to trick you," Ilara said softly. "I went because, for one night, I wanted to remember what it felt like to be a person. I didn't think you'd notice me. I'm just the girl who cleans your office." "You were never just a maid," he said, standing up and pulling her to her feet. He held her as if she were made of the finest porcelain. "You were the only light in this tomb, and I promise you, by the time the sun rises, no one in this house will ever dare to look down on you again." He didn't take her back to her cellar. He carried her up the stairs, past the stunned guards and the whispering servants, straight to the master's suite. He placed her on the bed, his bed, and called for the estate's doctor. "Fix her," Jaewook commanded, "and if I see another bruise on her skin, I will consider it a personal declaration of war against me." The escalation of the next few hours was swift and surgical. Jaewook didn't wait for morning. He summoned the elders of the syndicate to the grand hall. Ilara sat in the shadows of the balcony, wrapped in a silk robe, watching as the power shifted. Jaewook stood at the head of the table, the gold watch and the silver ribbon placed side by side in front of him. "My stepmother attempted to frame a member of this household for a crime that didn't exist," Jaewook announced, his voice echoing with a cold, predatory authority. "She used my father's memory as a weapon. In doing so, she has proven she is unfit for the Kang name." "You would exile your own family for a servant?" one of the elders asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. "She is not a servant," Jaewook said, his gaze shifting up toward the balcony where Ilara sat. "She is the woman who held my heart when I was wearing a mask. And from this moment forward, her debt is not only cleared, it is repaid tenfold by the blood of those who mistreated her." He turned to Madame Kang, who was standing in the corner, flanked by guards. "You will leave this estate tonight. You will take nothing but the clothes you are wearing. If you are ever seen within the city limits again, the hospitality of the syndicate will be much less refined." As the guards dragged his stepmother away, Jaewook didn't feel the triumph he expected. He felt a hollow ache. He walked up the stairs, his boots heavy on the marble, and found Ilara standing by the window, looking out at the moon. "It's over," he said. "Is it?" she asked, turning to him. "You've banished your family. You've cleared my debt. But I'm still the girl from the basement, Jaewook. The world won't see me the way you do." "Then we will change the world," he said, stepping into her space and taking her hands. "I don't want the lady in silver. I don't want a ghost. I want the woman who saw the man behind the monster and didn't run away." Before we continue, quick question. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for free, because the next story might be even crazier than this one. The days following the purge of the Kang estate were quiet, but the air felt different. It was no longer thick with the suffocating tension of hidden cruelty. Instead, it hummed with a new, uncertain electricity. Ilara no longer wore the gray polyester uniform of the service staff. She moved through the halls in soft silks, yet she still found herself pausing to straighten a crooked rug or flinching when a door slammed too loudly. Healing, she realized, was a slower process than liberation. Jaewook was a man possessed. He had spent years building walls, but now he was tearing them down with a feverish intensity. He fired the head of security. He replaced the kitchen staff who had whispered slurs behind Ilara's back. But most importantly, he stopped hiding. "There is a gala tomorrow night," Jaewook said one evening. They were in the library, not with her cleaning and him brooding, but sitting together by the fire. "The Busan Council is hosting it. Every major family will be there." Ilara looked down at her hands, which were finally beginning to soften. "You shouldn't take me, Jaewook. The rumors are already spreading. They call me the Maid Queen. They'll laugh at you." Jaewook reached out, taking her chin in his hand and forcing her to look at him. His eyes were no longer those of a hunter. They were the eyes of a man who had finally found his home. "Let them laugh. I want them to see. I want them to know that the most powerful man in the syndicate is nothing without the woman who kept his soul alive in the dark." He stood up and walked to a large mahogany box on the table. He opened it, revealing a gown that made the previous silver dress look like a mere rehearsal. It was a masterpiece of jinju, pearls, and iridescent silk, shimmering like the surface of the sea at midnight. "This time," he whispered, "no masks. Do not walk away now. This is where everything changes. If you are still here, you are part of this story. Stay with me." Like the video, subscribe for free, and comment your thoughts below. The gala was held in a glass ballroom overlooking the Han River. When the doors opened and the announcer called out the name of the Kang family, a hush fell over the crowd that was more deafening than any roar. Jaewook entered first, looking lethal in a tailored black suit. But it was the woman on his arm who stole the breath from the room. Ilara walked with her head held high, the pearls on her gown catching the light with every step. Her skin, which they had tried to make her feel ashamed of, glowed like polished mahogany against the silver-white silk. She saw the sneers. She saw the way the older women whispered behind their fans, their eyes sharp with judgment. But then she felt Jae-wook's hand tighten protectively on hers. "Watch this," he murmured. He led her to the center of the dance floor. The music began, the same melody from the masquerade. As they moved, the grace they had shared in secret was now on full display. They weren't just dancing, they were reclaiming the narrative. Every turn, every gaze told the story of a man who had been saved by the very person the world told him to ignore. In the middle of the dance, Jae-wook stopped. He didn't care about the protocol or the watching eyes of the council. He reached into his vest and pulled out a small velvet box. He didn't kneel because he was a king, and she was his equal. He simply opened the box to reveal a ring set with a rare black diamond, surrounded by a halo of silver brilliance. "You were a ghost in my house," he said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "But you are the only thing that is real in my life. Ilara, will you rule this empire with me? Not as my maid, not as my secret, but as my wife?" The collective gasp of the elite was ignored. Ilara looked at the man who had traded his ruthlessness for a chance at love. She looked at the ring, then back at the man who had finally learned to see. "Yes," she whispered. The roar of approval didn't come from the crowd. It came from the sheer force of their connection. The debt was gone. The family was banished. The black maid was a memory, replaced by a woman who had survived the fire and came out as gold. Like the video if the ending surprised you. Comment your reaction or your theory on what happens next for the Kang Syndicate. This was a journey of mass and truth, and I'm so glad you stayed until the final dance. Subscribe for free so you do not miss the next story.